Parks and Councilmembers Jan Perry, welcome to committee. We have an agenda that perhaps, no, I won't jinx it. We have a few items that we can cover. There's a few that are on consent, if my colleagues agree, and some we can continue, if they so choose. But I'd like to just ask you, out of courtesy to your neighbors sitting around you, if you can keep your conversations to a minimum, if not outside. As you can hear, the acoustics are not the best. When you do come up to the microphone, please give us your name and address. Sometimes we get kind of excited about our issue and we forget to identify ourselves. So we appreciate giving us your name and address. And keep your eye on the clock. There's a 2-minute clock as you come up to the microphone. You'll see it, it's to your right. And we write some very eloquent letters that you like to present, and I'd hate for you to miss the main point at the end. So just keep an eye on that, and we can hear the main point towards the end. You can submit that to the file for the record. If a person expresses the same point you were going to make, you don't have to repeat it all. You can say, I agree with the previous speaker, and give us something different or new so that we can get a full appreciation of the position of your issue, on your issue. That being said, we want to welcome our planning director, and she'll give us a presentation, and then we'll move to item number 1 after we dispense with. Well, let's just do this, Gail. Let me go through the agenda real fast, so that way folks that are waiting for these items can feel comfortable and decide whether they want to stay or leave. On item number 2, we're going to continue in plum to August 5th. Item number 3 is on the consent calendar, and I don't see cards for item number 3. Items 4 will continue in plum to August 5th. Item 5 we have on consent. Items 6 and 7 on consent. We have item 8 on consent. Item 9 we have cards, both A and B. 10 is our special report. We don't have a report for item number 11. And we have a few other guests here, students from Jefferson, Natalie, from Loyola, Sean, and from John F. Kennedy, Mario. These are student workers, I assume, working in the city clerk's office with Barbara. So thank you for bringing the crew with you. And I appreciate your presence, and hopefully this will stimulate you to continue through college and your master's and your doctorate and everything else. All right, guys. So that being said, Gail, have a report to give us, and then we'll go to item number 1.
Thank you very much, Chairman Reyes. Over the past few weeks, I have talked often here about the reorganization of the planning department. We've talked about how we are moving toward a full geographic distribution of our work with a geographic team for each of our area planning commissions. And we have put in place in the Valley the first 2 full geographic teams for the North and South Valley, and over the past month, we have turned the Valley into a full one-stop planning office. We took in our first subdivision map this week, so now for the first time, applicants can do all of their planning business in the Valley office, which was a commitment that I believe that we have been making over the last couple of years. So now that we have that in place, and I've explained to you, we're going to be working over the next few months to create geographic teams downtown. We are in an interim place in our evolution in the planning department, and we have new deputy directors. So I thought it might be helpful to bring for the 3 of you today, and I will distribute this to other council members tomorrow, an interim organization chart that let you know exactly what functions are reporting to each of our deputy directors. Our Deputy Director, Eva Juan McDaniel, will continue to do all of the administrative functions, and our new Deputy Director, Vince Bertoni, will have the following folks report to him: our Chief ZA, Mike Legrand, our Principal Planner, Dave Gay, with the Central, East, and South groups, and our Principal, Emily Gable, who does urban design, and Ken Bernstein, who is doing historic. Our Deputy Director, John Dugan, will oversee the work of Dan Scott, who is Principal in charge of the North and the Valley, and he will continue to oversee Betsy Weissman for West LA and the Harbor, and our citywide function of Jane Blumenfeld. You can also begin to see on the organization chart how the North and the South Valley is organized a little differently than the rest of the team. So this is just to help you if you wanted to call one of our principals or wanted to call one of our deputies. You'll have a better sense of the reporting relationships. Again, this is interim, and as we get to our full reorganization, we'll come back with an organization chart and explain it to you in some detail. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Goldberg. Appreciate that, and we'll save questions for later.
Thank you.
But thank you so much. Unless there's questions from my colleagues, seeing none, thank you so much. Thank you for your continuous work in this area. With that, we do have item number 1. And I wanted to ask my colleagues, Councilors Perry and Councilmember Park. Councilor Perry, would you like to speak first, or would you like to hear the staff report first and then speak? Do you have a preference?
If it's okay, can we speak first?
You can speak first, and we can hear the staff report, then we'll hear the public comment. So with that, Roberto, can you give us item number 1?
Yes, Councilman. Item 1 is a city attorney proposed ordinance. Has to do with an ICO to regulate the issuance of permit for the establishment of new fast food restaurants on commercial and industrial zones along major highways, major class highways 2, secondary highways in the West Adams, Baldwin Hills, Lamar Park Community Plan area. And Councilwoman Perry and Mr. Parks are present.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and committee. She's going to let age go first, she said. Oh, no, you said age. But we're here today because we think it's a very important ICO to go forward with. You all struggled with the issue of the auto-related businesses that started in the 8th and 9th District and became a citywide ordinance. This is a very similar process that we have identified in our community, an overconcentration of certain types of businesses on our thoroughfares. It's our belief that with this overconcentration, that it limits the ability for other businesses to come into the community. We believe it's a land use issue for the community to make those decisions as to what they think should populate their major thoroughfares. We also, in addition to the land use, believe that there is a certain level of health concerns in our community. Often 2 to 3 of the major intersection corners are populated with a variety of fast food restaurants. And when you combine that with communities that have a very few number of grocery stores and access to fresh food, you find that there are a number of people that believe there's a direct correlation to health issues that deal with diabetes, high blood pressure, and a variety of other things. We've gone together as Districts 8 and 9 to put together an incentive package to attract grocery stores. We're the most underserved area of the city as it relates to grocery stores. When we combine that or compound it with the issue of the proliferation of an overconcentration of fast food restaurants, it's our concern that we've not given our community ability to pick and choose. I don't think that certain parts of our city should learn to eat hamburgers 15 different ways. I think we should be able to give them options in which they themselves are striving for, and we figure out incentives that may bring of a sit-down restaurant. We know that in the Crenshaw specific plan that took well over 10 years to come to fruition, that one of the major points is no fast food restaurants on Crenshaw Boulevard as part of that specific plan. So it's not new territory. It's something in which we believe collectively that it's a benefit to our community to move in this direction. I think we need to correct one thing, and many people like to use the word ban. We're not talking about banning any kind of business. We think it's an administrative process they should go through with the conditional use permit to determine if there's overconcentration, if there are other issues that be taken into consideration, not only from design or land use, but also whether there's more than sufficient number of businesses. We have that citywide for liquor stores. We have it now with auto-related businesses. This is just one more way in which the community has input and somewhat of control in their community, and it also gives developers an opportunity to know what the standards are when they come into a community. Jumping the gun a little bit, we've already asked Ms. Goldberg to consider, as she does, our community plans, and they have not been updated for about 20 years, to add these type of elements in our community plan so it impacts on a permanent basis what our community believes should be in their particular community. So I'd ask that we move forward on this. It's been in process now for at least a couple of years, that we move forward, get this before the council so that our community can have some standard to look forward to as relates to these type of businesses.
Thank you, Councilmember Parks. I appreciate you joining us today in committee. Councilmember John Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and it's my hope that the committee members support this interim control ordinance today as drafted and transmitted to council. I believe that this ordinance merits your support because people should be afforded with choice, and the ICO allows time to create strategic planning guidelines that will attract a variety of community assets like full-service, sit-down restaurants, and grocery stores. This is not about banning fast food. It is about capitalizing on a window of time to ensure that the land we have left to develop in our respective districts is developed in a strategic manner that speaks to the need of the people who reside and live there, work there, and more diversity of choices. If people want to continue to eat fast food, they will have it. That is not the issue. The fast food restaurants that are here in South Los Angeles now are not going anywhere. But if people want to eat at a restaurant or go shopping at a neighborhood grocery store, these are choices that are not readily available to them at this time. Right now, as Mr. Parks stated, we are in the process of updating the South and Southeast community plans, and we are including an extensive set of design guidelines for our commercial corridors that will act as permanent guidelines to the interim control ordinance. These guidelines are being developed now and are actively being discussed and debated with community stakeholders. As you know, the community plan update process takes about 3 years, and we are just in the beginning of year 2. So it's important to have this interim control ordinance in place while the community plan update is in the works. There is an over-proliferation of one-of-a-kind food establishments in South Los Angeles. Our area is a mere 32 square miles, and yet we carry the greatest percentage of fast food establishments in the city. A Los Angeles Times analysis of the city's roughly 8,200 restaurants found that South Los Angeles has the highest concentration of fast food eateries. Compared with the West Side, for example, South Los Angeles has far fewer restaurants, about 900 versus 2,200, according to the Times analysis. About 45% of the restaurants in South Los Angeles are fast food chains or restaurants with minimal seating, compared with 16% on the West Side. Fast food, of course, is not the source of all ailments. In fact, many fast foods have tried and taken it upon themselves to respond to the public's desire to access healthier food selections. Ultimately, yes, people do make the choice as to what they put in their bodies, whether they choose to exercise or whether they choose to lead a healthy lifestyle. But in fact, there are not a lot of food choices in South Los Angeles. Previous decades of spot zoning, neglect, bias, prejudice, and stereotyping in planning these communities has resulted in this extreme imbalance. However, in South Los Angeles, we are limited in land, space, and we need to allow different opportunities for people who live here and may not be able to go to neighboring communities like Huntington Park, Inglewood, and Culver City. People are looking for a family restaurant that they can enjoy a leisurely meal after church or on Sundays with their friends or on Friday nights. There's a need for these amenities. According to a study that was commissioned by the Redevelopment Agency several years ago, done by C.B. Richard Ellis in 2005, just for example, Council District 9 Corridors project, less than 14 square miles, has an overall sales leakage of approximately $400 million annually in general merchandise, grocery, and restaurant sales. In simple terms, this means that the people who live in the 9th District south of Washington Boulevard are spending money outside of their communities because the retail amenities do not exist. So the ICO before you today is just one of the tools that Mr. Parks and I are using to encourage new businesses to develop in South Los Angeles. I also wanted to bring to your attention the marketing brochure, which was prepared to highlight the number of incentives that we offer to sit-down restaurants and grocery stores in the areas of financing, in the areas of energy, planning, and entitlements to not only provide some gap financing and equity financing, equity investment, and to discount on energy, to underground utilities, just to name a few things, but basically to save time and money for a developer to make it worthwhile to come and build a project in South Los Angeles. Thank you for your time.
Councilman Perry, I have one question. When you refer to we offer, who is we? Is that CDD, Community Development Department,
Well,
Community Development Agency, is that city?
The city of Los Angeles, the redevelopment agency, and it would affect the areas that, and I'll give you a copy of this if you'd like to take a look at it, the redevelopment areas in CD9 and CD8.
So it's one of the Community Redevelopment Agency?
Yeah.
Great.
It's called our Market Opportunities Brochure. And I said this to say this is not punitive. We're offering incentives to people that are very pragmatic and very achievable.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Any questions, my colleagues? Seeing none, thank you so much, folks. Okay, so let's have the Planning Department provide us report, please. Sign that one.
Thank you, Chairman Reyes. As you know, the purpose of the proposed fast food interim controlled ordinance.
Can you just move the microphone closer to you?
Okay,
There you
sure.
go.
The purpose of the fast food interim control ordinance is to prevent further impacts associated with the overconcentration of fast food restaurants in the South LA region. This will give the Planning Department time to study this issue further and establish permanent regulatory controls to address the adverse impacts on the built environment and the quality of life in South LA communities. The land use impacts associated with typical fast food outlets include low-quality design that is out of context with the surrounding community, poor landscaping, increased local traffic and air pollution, impact on pedestrian activity, expansive surface parking that contributes to the urban heat island, and a source of increased waste and litter in the neighborhoods. Additionally, the overconcentration of fast food restaurants at the expense of a diversity of neighborhood serving uses is detrimental to the quality of life for residents of South LA. This type of land use pattern along major corridors throughout South LA contributes to the area's environmental and aesthetic problems. The proposed fast food ICO was approved by the Plum Committee on December 11th of 2007. Since then, the ordinance has been revised with the assistance of the City Attorney's Office and is no longer a complete ban on fast food restaurants. As revised, the ICO would only affect standalone restaurants, which are the establishments that are associated with the land use impacts previously stated. Fast food restaurants that are seeking to locate within a larger development, for example, a mixed-use project, would not be affected by this ICO. In addition, the revised ICO establishes a discretionary approval process known as a project permit that includes an environmental clearance. Standalone fast food restaurants would have to meet 7 different criteria that seek to minimize land use impacts and prevent further undue concentration of such uses in the area. The majority of these criteria are specific to layout and design of the proposed project. Regulations such as these are already being implemented in other parts of the city, such as through specific plans or other protective overlay districts. Additionally, many cities throughout California establish regulatory controls for fast food uses, mainly for aesthetic reasons. In South LA, we have very compelling and legitimate grounds for implementing the proposed ICO. Lastly, for the record, I'd like to make a correction on the agenda. The proposed ICO includes council districts 1, 5, 8, 9, and 10. CD 15 is not a part of this ICO. In conclusion, Planning Department recommends that the Plum Committee approve the revised ordinance with the City Attorney's recommended changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from my colleagues? Yes, go ahead. I have a question. Go ahead.
Well, we have public speakers as well?
Yes, we do.
Okay. I have some questions on the actual language of the ordinance. Should I save those for after? Or?
Yeah, after that, we can, part of the directives,
Okay.
we can do that. I did want to ask in terms of your presentation and how we're assessing, and I want to be clear for the record. When we talk about impacts, can you describe some of the impacts that you refer to when we are regulating these facilities? Like, what variables are important to us? Its proximity to the residential, the placement of the voice box, the location of the trash. I mean, can you just speak a little bit to those issues?
Well, we try to address most of those in the 7 criteria that are part of the project permit process, and those are page 9 of the draft ordinance. For example, in terms of the compatibility of the project to the surrounding neighborhood, we're going to be looking at the height, bulk, and massing of the project. We'll be looking at locating driveways, curb cuts to the side streets as much as possible to prevent conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles. So there are several items here, as well as we also include landscaping requirements. And we're also asking for a pretty complete trash disposal plan that describes how the facility will be processing the waste and litter removal off the site.
Could we require other mitigating type of conditions like landscaping and beautifying the locations? Many of these locations are rather stark. You see very little green, no trees, no shrubbery.
Right, we're requesting that a minimum of 7% of the total surface parking lot be landscaped and that there be a coordinated landscape plan throughout. We're also banning drive-through windows, which is one of the biggest problems with the fast food restaurants.
Great, thank you.
And just for the record, I have to give my name, Mariko Beyond City Planning Department. Sorry about that.
It's okay, you're there. All right, we will call you back. There are some questions regarding the language of the ICO from Councilman Huizar. Okay, we do have several speaker cards on this item. Just keep your eye on the clock. We would appreciate your cooperation there. We have Lizette Hernandez, Lee Wagman, I believe it's Hailey Kim. So please come forward. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Lizette Hernandez, and I'm with Community Coalition. We're a nonprofit organization in South LA. I've been working on land use issues and a number of other social justice issues in South LA for almost 20 years. We stand in support of this ordinance. We urge your approval of this. Fast food restaurants act like nuisance sites, much like other, unfortunately, businesses in South LA. We think it's time for the city to use planning tools that it hasn't used in South LA, that it does in other parts of the city. And so we do applaud the leadership of Councilmember Perry for this, but, really, it's a tough battle out there when we don't have the leaders thinking ahead as we need them to in order to give our community a chance for healthier and safe lives. So thank you, and again, we urge your support. We'll leave you a letter as well.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. 1 minute. That was great. Lee Wagman.
Yes, hi, I'm Lee Wagman, 100 Wilshire Boulevard. I'm the chairman of the Martin Group, which is a real estate development company here in Los Angeles who've worked on projects in your district and in Mr. Weiss's district. We are also working on some projects in South Los Angeles right now, and I'm actually here to support this ordinance proposal today. What I like about this is that it is carefully drafted in a way to allow exceptions, to carve out hardships, to attack what I think is a very serious problem that both persons have spoken to already today, but to do it in a very carefully drafted way and attack only the standalone projects. We work primarily on mixed-use projects that try to integrate restaurants and markets and drugstores into housing and office projects. And this ordinance today allows these fast food restaurants to become parts of those, to be responsible parts of projects that I think add to a district, as opposed to taking the most valuable corners in a city where they're in a part of the city where the planning efforts probably are less strict than they are in others. And I think this accomplishes a tremendous amount in terms of land use planning. It's a very intelligent approach to a difficult and a tricky problem, and I compliment the drafting of it, and I'm here in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hailey Kim and Julia Ansley.
Good afternoon. My name is Hailey Kim. I'm here on behalf of Community Health Councils, and in hopes to ingratiate myself to the committee, I will keep my testimony to a minute as well. I think importantly, Councilmember Perry and Councilmember Parks spoke very succinctly about the problem that we encounter in South Los Angeles, and there's really no need to expand on that topic, other than that there are health implications associated with fast food establishments. We have an increase, I would say, among the highest rates of cardiovascular disease and diabetes among our South Los Angeles residents, and there is emerging evidence that demonstrates a nexus between fast food restaurants, or the proliferation of fast food restaurants, and these chronic diseases. So we applaud this committee and hope that they also take the steps necessary to enforce and implement the ICO. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. Thank you very much for that efficiency there. Julia Ansley, and then we'll have Marie Bryant.
Good afternoon. I'm Julia Ansley. I'm a community member. I live at 3828 Sutro Avenue, Los Angeles, in CD8. And I am here to wholeheartedly support this ordinance because, as a person who's lived in this community for over 40 years, I have seen the impact that fast food establishments have made in my community, a negative impact, because we have a whole generation of children who are growing up without having access to healthy, fresh foods, and the community we have to drive out of our community to go to other places. And as I was coming here, I was saying to myself, why do I have to drive to Westwood, or Westchester, or anywhere else? We should have the same access to healthy food and liquor, healthy lifestyles as everybody else. And as a retired elementary school teacher, I can tell you the impact that food has on the development of young children. It has had a negative development on the young children of South Los Angeles, and the visual impact is terrible. So please, I hope that they support this ordinance.
Thank you, ma'am. Marie Bryant, George Graham, and Matthew Sharp.
Good afternoon, Councilman Reyes and other members.
Good afternoon.
And Ms. Goldberg. I've been in meetings with her where she has heard the South Los Angeles residents plea for more healthy, full-service, sit-down restaurants, because other people have spoken on regarding the health issue. I would like to speak on revenue. when I go to restaurants in Culver City, West LA, Torrance, I'm taking money out of the city of Los Angeles. And so I would ask you to please support this ordinance, because I'm speaking in support of it. And, I forgot to give my name. Marie Bryant. I'm a member of the Community Coalition, as well as a committee member of the Planning and Land Use Committee for the Park Mesa Heights Community Council, and I reside in CD8. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. George Graham and Matthew Sharp. Good afternoon, Mr. Graham.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us. I want to, first and foremost, I want to thank Councilman members Perry and Parks for bringing this ordinance forward, pushing it. It's very much needed to the community. And as noted earlier, we are saturated with fast food restaurants throughout South LA, and as a result, our community suffers from an increased rate of health issues such as diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity. We are in full support of the proposed ICO in hopes that it will give way to a healthy, better alternatives as soon as possible in South LA. We really appreciate the effort, and we look forward to a better community, and welcome everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Matthew Sharp.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Matthew Sharp. I work with California Food Policy Advocates, one of the many health organizations working on these programs in low-income neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Won't repeat the health information that you've heard ad nauseum during this process, which is really terrific. It means that it's sort of sinking in as an important value in the planning vision for the city, but wanted to both officially offer our support for the motion and urge you to consider 3 next steps, because we wouldn't be advocates if we didn't ask you to do more. The first step is to begin evaluating whether or not the mix of incentives that are on the table are working. We have some good promising news about some new grocery stores coming into the community. It'd be great to take a more thorough look at the mix of those incentives. Are they the right ones? Are they making the difference that was intended? Because these processes are many years underway, and it'll take a while to reshape the neighborhood. So stare at some of the incentives. The second piece to begin thinking about is what to do immediately around the schools. We've made a lot of progress, as Mr. Weezer can attest to, in changing what's available in the schools. The food is really starting to be first class, believe it or not, and kids are learning much better health habits at the schools. Yet immediately afterwards, they are surrounded by street vendors, lots of convenience stores, undermining a lot of the efforts that are underway in the schools. So that's a challenge that has some planning implications to begin looking at. And then thirdly is to figure out what are the ways that the other city resources can help provide supportive messages. From the Recreation and Parks Department, you got Community and Senior Services, you got child care programs, a number of different ways that positive nutrition and health messages can be delivered so that some of the neighborhood changes can take effect. So more work to be done, but congratulations on this very good first step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Okay, I believe that concludes the public comment period for this item. I'm going to ask the staff to come to the microphone. We do have a question from Councilman Weezer regarding the language for the ICO.
Thank you very much, Chairman Reyes, and I support this motion. I think it's a good one, a good way using our land use processes to get to a health issue. And we've got to understand that this is but one tool of many others that we need to use to have healthier children. I do believe this helps, but we obviously need to do a whole lot more because, you know, quite frankly, we are trying to address a health issue while saying these types of restaurants can or cannot go into an area, but the categories of those restaurants are not necessarily that clear. There are some restaurants, for example, that we may consider fast food, but that are healthy. There are some restaurants that are not considered fast food, but may not be healthy. I think, however, that's just something we need to be aware of. It's not perfect. But we just have to, I guess, as these applications go through the process, look at the intent of this ordinance, and I think the zoning administrators and council offices will help get us to a place where we better fit what is being applied for with the ultimate goal of this ordinance. And in that vein, I did have a question about the definition of a fast food restaurant. It has there, and it says, any establishment which dispenses food for consumption on or off the premises and which has the following characteristics: a limited menu. Now, what is a limited menu? How do we, I mean, to me, that would, how would we define that?
Well, it's exactly, that, the limited menu, where, Charlie, how do you describe limited menu? The definition, I'm sorry. The definition is mainly a tool for trying to identify or characterize the fast food restaurants. We're not really, we realize that the fast food issue is multifaceted. However, the planning department is looking strictly at the land use implications involved in this issue. So the definition that we've provided, we've looked at several definitions used by other municipalities, and we believe that this definition is pretty comparable and is fairly adequate. It's just a way of describing the type of restaurant that is the one that's proliferating in this community, and those are just simply characteristics of the fast food restaurants. They're not necessarily items that we are trying to regulate.
Okay.
Charlie Roush, Planning Department staff. I might also add that the definition that is in this ordinance is the definition of a fast food restaurant, which is included in the site plan review ordinance that's already in the zoning code. And section on page 9, section 5B, also in its last sentence, includes the director shall have the authority to interpret the definition of a fast food restaurant when the application of the term to a specific establishment is not clear or is in dispute. So
okay,
we have remedies to that problem.
Okay, so when we get applications in this committee in the future and you tell me whether it's a fast food restaurant or not based upon the definition, and you guys tell me that it has a limited menu, how would I know what's a limited menu? What is a limited menu? I mean, give me an example of some restaurant that has a limited menu. That's what I'm trying to understand. We're going to have to decide these cases in the future, and I want to know now, before we set the rules, what are the rules?
I think a limited menu is, they're basically finger food items. Normally, yes, a lot of these restaurants will have salads now, which they haven't had in the past. But it's a limited set menu which has been there for the last 20 years at that restaurant, and but it's included other things. That's why the fast food restaurant is not limited only to the limited menu. There are other items in there to describe what is a fast food restaurant.
Okay, well, let's do this.
A limited menu, you could say Denny's has a limited menu, even though it's got a menu that goes on for 5 pages. But
well,
generally, it's something that fits up on a board.
Let's do this then. Before this ordinance gets to council, can the planning department or the city, working with the city attorney's office, who has to interpret this, provide us with some guidelines on what that means, so that when we get these cases before us, should this ordinance pass, we know how we will interpret that. Is that, city attorney, are you fine with that, or do you have anything to add to this at this time?
For the record, Sharon Cedar of Cardenas, City Attorney's Office. Councilman, the cases that will get to you, if they, who's the appeal? I don't think they would come to you except for a hardship exemption.
The appeal would be to the Area Planning Commission.
Yeah, okay.
Because the project permit compliance would
Aside
go
from
to-
that, aside that we will have to interpret them, how would they interpret it? How would they know what's a limited menu?
Well, first of all, somebody would come in and apply. It's the same way we do many things where the applicant decides what they are. The applicant would come in and they would say they want to establish a fast food restaurant, and then they would put in an application.
Okay, but nobody could tell me what a limited menu is.
Councilman, this is a definition that's been in the code for at least 10 or 15 years. The Planning Department and the Department of Building and Safety are quite used to working with it, and they know what it means.
Okay, well, okay, let somebody from the planning department tell me what it means. Give me an example.
Are you looking for a number of items on the menu?
What's the number
Because
of
I
items?
could come up maybe next for City Council bring you an average number of items on a menu, if that would suffice.
Okay, so McDonald's, they have a limited menu?
Yes.
And why? Because they have only a certain number of items that they have.
Right, and a certain standard, Big Mac or whatever, that you can't specialize your order as much as you can at a sit-down restaurant.
Councilman, could we perhaps,
It's basic.
let's read it if I may.
Okay. I need an explanation, if you could provide us an explanation.
Yeah, it's basically something that shows up on a menu board. There's not menus handed out as a matter of right to
Councilman Wisar?
people coming in to eat.
Can we do this, Councilman Wisar, is we can direct them to include a definition of a limited menu in the ordinance before it gets to council.
Yeah.
And that'll be the directive of this committee if we can do that.
May I just make one point on this, which is, I don't know if it makes it easier or worse, but Ms. Trifoletti is just pointing out that in Westwood Village, under the Westwood Village specific plan, there are certain limitations on, is it called fast food restaurants? And we have a war in Westwood every time Ben & Jerry's wants to go in, or Smoothie King, that's the latest one, right? Or Starbucks, or things which are, frankly, probably not commonly considered to be part of the negative, they don't have the negative connotations of the establishments that are being talked about here. So, with all due respect, I think there may be some experience in the departments in dealing with it, but it doesn't make it any easier. And I think Mr. Wisar is on the right track in trying to find a less subjective standard. I don't know what the answer is, and I'm sure there is one.
Yeah. And I'm willing to wait. I support this ordinance. I want to just make sure that we're clear on what are we going to allow or not allow, and there's going to be a lot of wiggle room if we leave it as vague and subjective as this. And that's why I started off my conversation by saying that the zoning administrators and everyone else looking at this will look at the intent of this ordinance, but I'm of the opinion that I'd rather be a bit more specific as to what we can and cannot do so that everyone is clear on what we're doing. McDonald's, I think they've been increasing their number of items on their menu, so at what point do they then increase, apply and say, no, we don't have the standard, I don't know what they have, 50 items. Now we're adding salads and all this other stuff, and that would be a good thing, but maybe they add another 50. Does that mean they get out of the definition? So.
Right. Excuse me, Councilman. For the record again, Sharon Cedar Cardenas. The aspect of being a limited menu is just one part of the definition. It's also that there's no table service. It's also that food is prepared basically in takeout containers, and it's not meant to be really a sit-down restaurant. And those are the types of things they're going to look at. So a limited menu is just one aspect of the definition.
But we have to understand what that is nonetheless. And the other items, and that was my other question, the other definition, the other pieces of that, they don't have to, it's not like a checkoff, right? It's like you look at all those definitions collectively, right? That's how you decide whether it's a fast food or not. So you could have one, not the other, et cetera. Okay. And finally, I think that when we were here last time, we had a lot of questions and raised a lot of issues, and I want to thank the planning department and the city attorney's office. We did clarify a lot that was very vague back then, and we've come back with a tighter ordinance, I believe. And like I said, this is but one piece of many other things we need to do, but I do believe that one of the most effective things we do as aside from going the land use route is just to get direct at the point, which is education for people. Let them know and have a huge campaign by the city and the county about what's healthy and what's not healthy to eat. Because even if we reduce the number of these restaurants in a particular neighborhood, these kids are bombarded day and night with advertisements on TV and billboards and everywhere else they look, and telling them what they should be eating. And so I think a better way to go about that is to have something else that's telling them what is healthy to eat. That's the real goal and intent of this ordinance. And I think we all know that's a more effective way of going about it. But this helps, and I'm glad to see that the council members for the area are stepping up to do something that within the city's powers to do that. But we could also go the education route and be as forceful in telling people they have a choice, but this is what's healthy and this is what's not healthy.
Okay, so any other questions? We can move to approve the city attorney and prepare the ordinance for council. Is that a yes vote?
Before the members is the ordinance. For further clarification, are we going to want a further definition of limited menu prior to it being scheduled to council? Because the final ordinance is what's before the committee right now.
Okay, we have the ordinance already.
Yes.
So we'll move the ordinance.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Okay. So that'll be the action of this committee. All right. Next item, Roberto.
The next item, Councilman, is item 9A and 9B. 9A is the appeal by Bernard Feinstein. He's appealing the determination of the Planning Commission as it relates to a site plan review for a property at 23133 Sherman Place in CD3. And 9B is an ordinance relative to the zone change and height district change for the property at the same site. And Planning Department is present.
So we could take 9A and B together?
Yes, Council.
Okay.
Honorable Council.
You want to just pause for a second while people walk out? It'll be hard to hear. You just pause for a second while people leave.
Staff.
This is staff, right?
Staff.
Oh, no. I thought he was staff.
No, he's
Let's
the
get staff to come on up. Could you please take a seat, sir, and we'll call you up. If you take a seat, and then we'll call the staff up. All right.
Good afternoon, honorable committee members. I'm Linda Smith with the City Planning Department. What is before you are two items, an appeal and also a request for a zone change or vesting zone change, height district change, building line removal, and site plan review. This is for property located at 23133 Sherman Place. In January of this year, January 24th, the City Planning Commission approved the entitlement request. These requests were for a mixed-use project, a mixed-use project that would have approximately 10,500 square feet of medical office / commercial use and 160 dwelling units attached to it. There was quite a bit of debate at the City Planning Commission. There were members of the public there, the council office, and also the applicant basically sat down with the commission and in response to concerns and some issues that were raised at that meeting, the City Planning Commission decided to include or voted to include conditions of approval related to potentially increased traffic and also the potential for overflow parking into the residential area adjacent to the subject site. A couple of the queue conditions or requirements that were approved by the commission that day. The first required that of the 299 parking spaces that are required for the project, 53 of those spaces are for the commercial and office component. The commission asked that those 53 spaces be made available after hours for residential guests of the facility. You should keep in mind that the subject site is located east of the Springfield single-family residential area, and they are basically separated by both Sherman Place and Woodlake Avenue. So we're talking of over 100 feet of street separating the subject site from the residential area to the west. One of the other queue conditions that the City Planning Commission asked be included, or required to be included, was that all of the mitigation and project requirements that were part of the traffic assessment that was done by LADOT, they asked that all of those requirements and all of that mitigation be included and be made conditions of approval. That traffic assessment was part of the environmental clearance on the project. Also, in response to the appeal that's been brought forward, there was a question with regard to limiting medical office space expansion. The proposed zone change to RAS 4 allows for office, commercial, and for residential use. That zone is consistent with the general plan. This particular use is consistent with that zone. Therefore, there is no impact with regard, or there is no covenant or any issue that would limit development on the site to only medical office use. Those were the primary issues that were brought up at the commission meeting, and those were the responses of the commission to those issues. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from my colleagues on this? No? Okay. So let's ask the appellant. The appellant would like to step forward. That's, I believe, Bernard Feinstein. Just share with us the nature of your appeal, Mr. Feinstein.
I'm sorry?
The nature of your appeal. Why are you appealing?
Well, frankly, we're concerned about...
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
We are...
Name and address.
Right. My name is Bernard Feinstein. I live at 7317 Woodville Court, West Hills, in a 4-bedroom, single-family home, and I'm a member of the Springfield Homeowners Association. With my wife and I, 2 grown daughters and 2 granddaughters, 7 and 9, we occupy this residence. We have 4 cars, 2 parked in the garages and 2 in the driveway, because according to the CCNRs, we're not permitted to park on the street overnight due to security concerns. This house may not be typical, although it is heavily utilized, of all of the 86 units in this detached condominium complex. However, there is significant parking, cars being used in this particular location. What is the point of this? With family incomes far outpaced by escalation of housing prices, these proposed 160 units, residential units, singles, 1-bedroom, 2 bedrooms, will contribute more sizably to parking and traffic congestion than DOT guidelines might suggest. Add to this the 39-unit, 2- and 3-bedroom condo complex just across the street at 23130 Sherman Place, the West Hills Post Office, and the Letterer Estate make for an impossible parking and traffic situation. This doesn't even consider the normal flow of cars moving through Sherman Place to and from Woodville Court and Medical Center Drive that cannot and will not be contained readily by this restrictive location. Against 2 overwhelming rejections by the West Hills Neighborhood Council, both apartments and condos, the complex, with the support of Dennis Zine, Councilman, DS Ventures, their developer Somas, were able to push through a zoning change through the City Planning Committee. Van Nuys, which the public was not invited to. At a prior session, there was so much confusion and vagary that the session had to be continued. I'm probably running late, so let me just say that I respectfully request that you consider the quality of life in this community and insist this project be significantly scaled back, to consider the additional traffic and parking remedies, and request that environmental impact report be provided before the approval is granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay. We'll also have with us the applicant, Joel Miller. You need to come on up, please. And then we'll have Patricia Chin.
Mr. Chair, I was wondering if it might be more efficient if I speak after the opponents.
That's fine. Patricia Chin.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Patricia Chen, and I'm with Miles Chen Law Group,
and we are located at 9911 Irvine Center Drive, Suite 150, Irvine, California, 92618. We represent Marion Lederer and the Marion Lederer Family Trust. 23137 Sherman Way is the Lederer Estate, which is also designated Historical Monument 204 by the City of LA. The Lederer Estate is the adjoining property directly south of the proposed project. We believe that the proposed project will impact a historical resource, namely the Lederer Estate, as follows. First, the proposed project will alter in an adverse manner the agrarian nature of the Lederer Estate, which was one of the primary characteristics that accounted for its inclusion in the Los Angeles Register of Historical Resources. The proposed project will also result in the destruction of the Lederer Estate because of its impact on the slope supporting the estate. We have submitted a geologist report detailing the instability of the slope, which was triggered by a 39-unit condominium development at 23100 Sherman Place, which is adjacent to the Lederer Estate. Today, Jonathan Brand handed to me a geotechnical report dated June 24, 2008, which we have never seen before. It does attempt to address this issue. We haven't had a chance to take a look at it in depth. It also refers to documents that we have never seen and are not available in the public file, and this is part of the CEQA issues that we've kind of identified before. In any event, the mitigated negative declaration does not even acknowledge the proximity of the Lederer Estate, and it fails to examine any of these issues at all. The mitigated negative declaration also does not properly analyze the cumulative impacts as required by CEQA.
Can you please
okay. I just have a few more things.
Please conclude.
Okay. For example, the traffic study does not address the 39-unit condo project and the fact that there will be 4 competing driveways within a 100-foot vicinity on Sherman Place. It also, during the planning process, the project applicant has changed the project description from condos to apartments, back to condos to apartments, and it's been a moving target for us to really understand what the project has been. And finally, the mitigated negative declaration used the inappropriate baseline to analyze project impacts. It assumed that the zoning change would be approved and then concluded that the impacts were insignificant. So we respectfully ask that the Plum Committee reconsider the mitigated negative declaration approval.
You referred to a geotechnical report. Who was the originator? Who wrote that report?
It looks like it's from Geotechnologies, Inc., and it's addressed to DS Ventures. Attention, Josh Roberts. I have never seen this report before.
But who triggered that report? Who asked for that report?
It looks like DS Ventures commissioned this report to address the geology report that we submitted.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have 2 cards left, Mr. Brand from the council office and Joel Miller. Mr. Miller, come on up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Joel Miller. I'm with SOMAS. Our address is 555 South Flower, downtown 90071. I'm present representing DS Ventures, the project applicant. I won't repeat what the staff said in describing the project. I will tell you, however, that on January 24th of this year, the City Planning Commission unanimously approved the project, and one comment that was made by Commissioner Roshan at the conclusion of the hearing was that he felt that this is one of the best projects that has ever come before the City Planning Commission. It's the right project at the right time in the right location. Despite what Mr. Feinstein said about the public not being invited to that public hearing, it was advertised appropriately. There has not been a change in the project description. The project as originally filed was for 160 apartments. At the request of some of the members of the community in the council office, the project was changed to condominiums, and that's the way it remains. It's not vacillated. None of the material issues that have been raised today have not already been heard by the City Planning Commission. The item on traffic and parking has already been vetted by the Commission. LA DOT has reviewed the traffic report, imposed mitigation measures to fully mitigate traffic and parking impacts. The issue on historic resources that has been raised today has also been put to bed. A report was commissioned by an historic architectural consultant and filed with the commission prior to their decision. On this point on soils, the soils report has already been approved by the Department of Building and Safety, so I think it's safe to say we could put that issue to rest. Finally, there's a condition that addresses driveway locations, so the Department of Transportation has final say on the driveway locations. The last thing I wanted to mention today is that there were some conditions that were inadvertently left off of the City Planning Commission that the Council Office wanted to see, and we volunteered, and I'd like to leave those with the City Clerk, if I may.
Okay, and those conditions were reviewed by the Council Office?
I believe they have, and I think Jonathan Brand is here to address that.
And how about the planning staff? Did they review the conditions?
They've seen prior versions of it, but probably not the one that, not the latest one. But
Well, I would like to have
Sure.
the planning department staff look at these conditions and understand its impact.
Start with the first condition. So.
Linda, do you feel you need more time? Because I don't want you to feel pressure to make decisions on the dime here. If you haven't had the opportunity to review the conditions, I'd rather us continue this 1 week if that's possible, but I'd like to get your response to that.
Thank you, Linda Smith, City Planning. I'm looking at the new conditions of approval. There appear to be 4 listed. As a matter of fact, the first condition with regard to landscape plans being reviewed by the Council Office is included already in the Commission Office determination. I believe there was some discussion at the Commission meeting regarding pedestrian gates. That was not an issue that the Commission felt or was something that was under their purview in order, and it was not something that they could really make a decision regarding. This is basically indicating that a gate would be located in 2 locations regarding the single-family area to the west. I'll let the applicant go ahead and describe that additionally, but the commission could not make a determination or make a determination on that matter. With regard to condominiums, the city cannot require them to file as condominiums. That is something that they have the option of doing. The initial application was filed for apartments. The decision was made actually for apartments. The potential valet parking, this is a condition that could be added, and it could be added as a regular condition of approval, but also it could be added as a volunteered condition as well.
Well, have these conditions been discussed with the Council Office? You know, I'm not feeling, well, go ahead, Mr. Brand.
Yes.
Please introduce yourself. Mr. Brand, come on up.
I should excuse myself. My name is Jonathan Brand. I'm with Councilman Dennis Zines' office. Yes, we have reviewed these revised conditions, and they were implemented to help be as extra protection for the outlying single-family homes, which are several hundred feet away.
Madam Attorney?
For the record, Sharon Cedar of Cardenas. Just a slight clarification to condition number 1. I believe that it should say it should be reviewed and approved by the planning department in consultation with the council office.
Okay. But in terms of its impact, Linda, if you could come on up. You know, I'm watching you read the conditions as you're sitting there, and I feel very uncomfortable not giving you the necessary time to evaluate what it is they're recommending, unless it's very basic, what's being recommended.
Actually, with regard to this landscape plan, the existing language is already in the conditions of approval. It's already included as part of condition number 4 under site plan, and it does require that.
So that's already included?
That's already included. That language is already there and part of the determination. With regard to the other items, these can all be included as volunteered conditions. How they are implemented, I think, would probably be better discussed between the applicant and the council office, actually.
How they will be implemented?
Yes, yes.
Come on up, please.
Then you don't want to do
Mr. Chair, these are voluntary conditions that the City Planning Commission did not address. We've taken it upon ourselves to impose these conditions, self-impose these conditions. And I've seen these conditions written in other decisions where it says voluntary condition, and if that's more appropriate, that's fine with us.
So these are improvements?
Yeah, they're improvements beyond what the City Planning Commission.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. Okay, any questions from my colleagues? So Mr. Brand, you are in support of this project. Can you speak to the project a little bit, please?
Yes, sir. The council office supports the recommendation of the CPC along with the volunteer conditions that we just mentioned. There are very few places in this area where new multifamily is appropriate. It's mostly single-family bedroom community, but this site is one of them because it lies directly adjacent to a major employer in the area, which is the West Hills Hospital, and the site is rather far away from any existing single-family homes. I think there's 2 within 500 feet, and they're way up top the hill. So if you're to put single-family really anywhere, this is the place to do it. Excuse me, multifamily. This is really the only place to do it, and there's also a first right of refusal that the applicant has volunteered as well for anybody who works in that hospital to have first dibs at those condos. And I think with gas at $5 a gallon and the traffic situation we have citywide, especially on our freeways, to get people to work closer to where they live is a very important concept.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues on this? We have a motion. We have support from the council. Looks like conditions are voluntary and towards improving the project. The commission voted favorably on this. Yes, ma'am.
And as condition number 1 is modified by the city attorney.
As modified by the city attorney. We have a yes vote on this. I'm seeing 3 yeses. That'll be the action of this committee as modified by the city attorney with the conditions that have been included. That'll be the action of this committee. Anything else, Roberto?
For 9A, you denied the appeal, correct?
Right, deny the appeal on 9A.
Public comment, Councilman.
Okay, anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.